Welcome to the winter passage. A living sort of field that we might explore with one another, as we move through the autumn, most of us moving through the autumn and really into the winter time, which is that gradual sort of falling away, right, of the brightness and into the holidays, where a different sort of light, we might say, makes itself known, makes itself available. A light that isn't so much of the sun, that solar light of accomplishment, of getting things done, of knowing, of doing, of clarity, but a light that's more rooted in that sort of lunar descent. It's a moonlight, isn't it? The wisdom of the feminine principle in contrast to that solar masculine movement. It's a different movement in soul, and more of that really resting in the nurturing, the nourishing sort of radiance of the self, of the beloved, of the totality, as the psychic, somatic, the neurophysiological ground of healing, which is that resting in self. The ground of healing, the ground of spiritual realization, of union with reality, a unity with the totality. All of which requires, in my experience anyway, a certain emptying of the cup. There's an emptying that we can do ourselves, a sort of self-emptying. And there's a way that life will do that to us, that we will be emptied out of that dream, of that fantasy, of that, that dream of me and my life and the way I was so sure it was all going to turn out, the way it was supposed to turn out, that dream. And that asking that of that capacity and that willingness to really stay more on those experiences of not knowing, which aren't always that easy for us, are they? But I'm hoping with the winter passage here and in coming together and being together, that there's a way we might be able to access some of that not knowing, that ripening into that lunar descent together, because it's not always easy to do on our own, and we weren't crafted as relational beings to do this work on our own. That's just not the kind of nervous system that is on offer here. Maybe in another dimension, on another star, there's a different kind of nervous system, but the one that we seem to have here is one that's relationally configured and crafted. And that's not something we need to apologize for, to judge, to shame, to attack, to be aggressive towards, but one to rest into and honor the beauty of that and the pain of that, the chaos and the glory, the full spectrum. And I think as we arrive here today, I think the most basic invitation here at the start is really to pause, is to take a pause, in our bodies, in our minds, in our nervous systems, in our souls. It's such a gift that we can give to ourselves in this time, in this world, and the state of our world right now. A few moments, to interrupt that habitual sort of trance and disembodiment that we can all fall into, where we find ourselves on autopilot, just plugged into the matrix in one way or another, into the collective field, which is one of stress, one of restlessness, one of speed, a frenetic, unsafe energy where we lose contact with earth, with the ground beneath us, and with the earthiness and the sensuality of reality itself. With the ways that the soul is always communicating with us. In just a few moments to really feel into the quiet rhythm, which is underneath all of the busyness, all of the shakiness, all of the restlessness, all of that hyper and hypo arousal in the collective right now. To reconnect with our bodies, with our senses, with our breathing, with our hearts, with our bellies, with our throats. Remember those. And also at the same time to connect with something larger than ourselves, larger than my own personality. Not to deny that, but to relativize it a bit. There's something else going on here on this earth, in this experiment, other than me and my own personality. It's included, of course. It's vital. But an opening into that mystery, that's keeping the stars and the planets and the galaxies and the sun and the moon from falling out of the sky, that mystery. And it's important, I think, to remember that this particular holding environment, that this containing mandala here that we find ourselves in together, isn't just yet another place to collect more ideas, to accumulate more and more new concepts, new beliefs, new ideas about things. We already have so much of that. We already have so much data and information that we're being asked to process just by being a human being on the planet right now. Some of it we're conscious of, some of it we're not conscious of. It's deep in the body, it's deep in what we call the somatic unconscious or the shadow. But the intention here is really something maybe a little bit less common, we might say. Something more rare, something more intimate, something more relational, something more sensitive, and just that living field of presence, where we can reconnect with this mystery, with the preciousness, with the opportunity of this human life, to discover a doorway or a portal into the actual sacredness of this experience, of this opportunity. And it's so easy to lose contact with this. It makes sense. It's understandable. But I often, think about or ponder this image of the Eleusinian Mysteries. Maybe some of you know of those, those sort of ancient initiations where pilgrims sort of would gather together and sort of journey from the outer world all over the place on the planet to come together in that inner sanctum of soul. And under the cloak of night, they gathered not to learn some new set of beliefs or doctrines or even techniques. You can get those anywhere. But to remember deep in the body, deep in the cell tissue, deep in the nervous system, to descend, to drop, to dream again, to reimagine, to revision, to participate in a certain flow of re-enchantment that our planet so desperately needs right now. That contact that we've lost with enchantment, understandably so. And to really enter sort of into the depth of soul, the depth of psyche, the depth of the body, not as some sort of problem, not sort of some cosmic error that we need to fix or we need to cure, but as a way to really touch that holy ground of renewal, to reconnect with the water of life that's flowing, guided by those more unseen hands, of Demeter or Persephone and all the other midwives and sort of friends of the underworld. We all have our gaggle of lineage figures, Hermes, so forth, the trees, the sun, the moon, the forests, the streams, whatever that is for you. Those midwives of this water of life. And so we want to open a portal here somehow where we can reconnect with these ones, with these figures, with these energies. Our world desperately needs this right now. This crisis of imagination, this loss of imagination, this loss of connection with enchantment. And so that we gather as contemporary women and men and pilgrims, to participate in that ancient rhythm of death and rebirth, that cycle that has been going on since beginningless time, forgetting and remembering, losing and finding, separation and union, and to allow something within us really to ripen in the dark, in the winter, in the wintering of the seasons, in the wintering of the soul, and to something to dissolve, something to empty out so that something new is able to be reborn, which it cannot do unless the cup is first emptied. And that emptying, in my experience anyway, almost always, not as some law, but almost always seems to involve some aspect of touching into grief, into the embodiment of grief, grieving, and not only, of course, what all of us, each of us, have lost over the weeks, the months, the years, over these last 5, 7, 10 years, but also grieving for that which remains unlived, grieving for the unlived life. And all of us have a connection to that as open, sensitive human beings, born through a womb. And so this space here together, it's not so much of a classroom or a course or anything like that. I mean, we probably use those words, but in me anyway, the images that come to me is more of a sanctuary. It's not so much a workshop, but more in the spirit of those ancient mystery schools, in the most archetypal sense, a space where the soul's own wisdom, your soul's, the unique wisdom of your soul, may be able to sort of peek through and emerge, trembling and luminous, in the company of kindred hearts, fellow friends and travelers here, where we can touch in somehow beyond space and time to what in relational neuroscience we would refer to as a shared or a joined window of tolerance, where we're able to access material, soul material, pieces of soul, the lost orphans of Psyche and Selma. We're able to access that material in a way that's just too difficult, too shadowed, too occluded, too unsafe even to access on our own. So that's one of the deeper intentions for this work.